Yes. I put this presentation together at noon, so bear with me. It is very quick. But I think the most important part is that we're just going to go through actual documents that you'll be using for inspections, and then just some information that I always share in this class as far as like, what a defect is and what you're going to come up. We're going to actually look through a couple of inspections from houses that I've either sold or listed, so you can get an idea of like what you're looking through. Inspection reports can be 40 pages long, and so in order to like really dive into them and see, I think it's helpful if you can like actually look through something and not get super overwhelmed. And everyone's going to be different, and we'll kind of get into that because everybody uses a different inspector. Okay, I always start with the contract. So this is the purchase agreement. This is kind of where everything begins on the buyer side, right? So we have this form. This is page 4. It actually starts on page 3 because our contract got really long, but it's really obnoxious because it's just telling you on page 3 that inspections are. So you have 3 options for inspections. You can do a waive of inspections. You can reserve the right for inspections, and then the property can be sold as is. These 3 options, the majority of the time you're going to be using number 2, which is the buyer reserves the right to have independent inspections. This will include any inspection that you want. There are a couple of requirements in our county and as well with a lender, so that's why we see this FHA, VA inspection kind of information here. This also does not get, those things cannot be waived in the waiver of inspections as well. So even if you waive those, FHA and VA inspections would have to take place. That also means that like a septic inspection on any required properties in our county, this is all changed, septic has, and we're going to go into that in just a minute, but septic and our water test are both required, and so those would be required no matter what. So even if you waive it, the county is still going to make you do those 2 reports, the septic, water. And then of course the lender can require some things. FHA appraisers are always going to be inspecting the property when they're out there. They're looking for really major items. So think, they have a problem with peeling paint. That's always the one that gets flagged the most in FHA. But they're also looking for conditions of the roof. So if they can tell with just a non-roofer opinion that the roof looks like it's within the last 2 years of its useful life, they can require that. FHA can also be looking at GFCI outlets. There's a handful of those things. You would get that report. But again, those are going to be required repairs. So somebody is going to have to do them in order to close on the property, okay? VA also requires a termite inspection. It's the only one that's different. That inspector is also looking at condition of the property. Otherwise, it's a conventional loan, and that appraiser can require repairs. I've had it done before. They just don't very often. It would have to be very, very obvious. Like they'd have to walk into the property and say, this is completely unlivable and requires something to change. But again, most of the time you're going to be working in this area of you're going to reserve the right to inspections.
Septic and water have to test it regardless of what loan?
In St. Joe County. Okay. So if you're not in this county, then it is not required. Even cash. There are some exceptions to this rule that changed. So actually, this is going to get really deep into it. And also really deep. No, it's good. I love this. No, it's really good.
It's good information.
Some of this stuff will don't worry, don't stress too much about it because it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. We changed these rules last July. Okay, so we have only been doing this for a year, and I will tell you that 90% of seasoned agents in this office would never be able to tell you what property is required on a septic inspection to this day, because we don't really know. It is all to do with an aquifer that runs underneath the ground. So there's a map of it. You can see it. I'm doing this shape because that's kind of how it runs. It runs like this into our county, and those properties are required by the county. If it falls outside of that aquifer, you technically don't need to do a septic inspection. I would get a septic inspection. I would be encouraging my buyers to get a septic inspection because septics aren't cheap at all. Right now, a cheap septic is probably going to run anywhere from $25,000 to $30,000, and that's on a pretty standard, just need to throw a new septic and field in. So I would still do it. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of the things that I would always have inspections of. And you're going to find that through the course of like what you do, what problems you run into, that you might do different inspections than some people. I'm going to give you kind of the base of like where I start, and I'll talk to you about why I start there. So yes, water quality test is still required in St. Joe County. You do have to make sure that the water quality is good. We often confuse this with the well inspection. The well is not required. It's just the quality of the water on properties with a septic. When you get to this point, there's a lot of little things, and so I think it's just like asking a field trainer, okay, here's my property address, help me out, where's the start? Like Megan said to do these things, but is it required on this property? I think you're always in a good position to over-inspect or at least offer the septic. Let your buyers choose, of course. We're not making any of these decisions, right? You've done a contract class already, correct? Okay, so we're not making any of these decisions for our buyers, but to tell them, hey, I would suggest a septic inspection. It's not on the aquifer. It's not required. The only time I probably wouldn't inspect it is if the property had sold recently and maybe that septic was passing and I have a septic inspection from 2 years ago. Maybe not. Probably still would, but again, these are some of those things that once I'm at the property and I have some understanding of it, what I would be doing going forward, if that makes sense. Water quality with a septic. Obviously, our city water is tested. You know, I hate this now because like Flint, Michigan, you know, they were testing their water too, and they weren't. So I wouldn't be surprised. I've had buyers that are buying properties in the city that would still get water tested. Are you guys all in this county? Am I speaking to like a class of like Michigan and Elkhart? No Michigan people?
2 from Elkhart.
Okay, 2 from Elkhart. So in Elkhart County, it's different. So there is no required septic and no required water quality test. So I think you just need to, one, speak to Scott or Aaron and ask them like how often they are requiring or they're suggesting these things. I've sold property in Elkhart County and I still get a septic and water test. Again, big ticket items, and water is really important, right? If you're going to drink water. Yeah. Okay. So the other one is property is sold as is. I did not attach this addendum because I absolutely cannot stand an as-is sale. I would rather you do inspections than go into as-is. This is something useful, and I'll show it to you, this as-is addendum. The wording of this is so terrible. If we get this changed, this is actually a very useful, box. But right now, the way that this is currently written, it allows a buyer to back out of a contract for any reason. So sure, if you're working with a buyer, maybe it's a great idea to use this. But I will tell you that if you're writing on one of my properties and you send this to me, I'm going to send it back to you and I'm going to say, hey, I've already prepped my sellers for an as-is offer, and they would not prefer that you write it this way. Could you reserve your right to independent inspections or spell this out into a little bit more detail? Hold on, I'll show this to you real quick. But it is an option, and you will see it. Oh, geez.
There's gate maybe on those. Oh, there you go.
Oh, got it. Okay. I didn't even think about logging into Dotloop. This is a good. Have you had your Dotloop class already?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, none of my presets are in here, so this is going to be fun. I guess I could see it up there.
Oh, that one filled for you. Go back, delete it. It pre-filled for some reason for you, and then you just add it onto the Excel. Yeah. Click it.
Do we think it is? Let's try it.
We can try it and see what happens.
Maybe because I'm in Google. Google's so weird. 6, 7, 8, 5, 2, 1. Hey.
So everything that she's looking at right now are specific to her transactions only. Remember from our .loop class, Andrea had the access to kind of go into anybody's, but these are specifically Megan's transactions.
You do not want my .loop class because my .loop's a mess. Okay. So everything that we are talking about are in the IAR residential documents. I should have added this. Sorry, guys. This is a good. All right, so this is the as-is addendum to the purchase agreement. So another one of these forms. Basically, what the idea is that you are reserving the right for inspections, but the buyer is saying, hey, I'm going to take it no matter what. I just need to know, I want some information. But because it allows them to terminate with a mutual release and get their earnest money back, if there is a defect, contracts fall apart for GFCI outlets that are, $75, and any seller would probably do that, right? Like if they're in this contract and you're telling them that the only thing that's holding them back is a $75 GFCI outlet, they're going to do it. Shoot, half of us in this room would probably just say, I have $75, I'll just pay for it. Let's get this moving forward. I want to close on this transaction. And so this is kind of the problem with this form. I'm going to give you an idea of how to use an as-is purchase without actually using this form. You took a contract class. You're going to hear me say over and over again that the most important thing is to know your contracts. You're going to sit into all of these things, and even the things that I tell you, you're going to sit here. Don't autofill things that I have suggested to you. Don't autofill in things that you heard about. Well, here in homeowners insurance, we always put 15 days. We don't always put 15 days. We don't always do these things. Even the things that I'm going to tell you, every time it's going to depend on the actual client that you have in front of you, right? Okay. So these are where we start, right? And then the next thing that we talk about is kind of the rest of the information. So we have said that we're reserving rights for inspections. So now we're going to talk about an inspection response period. So again, we're going to talk a little bit about filling this stuff in. So here, it depends. Depends on how aggressive I'm being in my contracts or how aggressive I want my buyers to be in order to get a deal put together. So the initial inspection period for a property within the city limits, where I'm not talking about septic or water tests, they typically take a little bit more time, I'm probably putting 10 days in here. If it's a holiday, I might be doing 12. If I'm not competing, I might be doing 14. 10 is usually good. If I'm calling my inspector and the one that I really prefer and that I'm recommending to my clients is really, really busy, I might be putting more time here. But in city limits, very standard inspections, I'm probably putting 10.
Even with the septic?
No. So if I'm doing a septic or a water test, then those dates get drawn out because a nitrate test takes 7 days for the test to read. So you have to have at least that much time, right? So I'm probably putting 14 days, anywhere from 14 to 16 days on my initial period. So that's this time right here. This starts the day after the contract. So today is July 7th, so day 1 is July 8th. These are calendar days, so not business days. And then the next section talks about additional days. So this is, if I find something in my initial inspection that I need further investigation about, I would be adding days here. This to me looks anywhere between 3 and 5 days. Now this is, your inspection has to be complete. You have to have the form back in your hand, in your possession, time to review with your buyers, write up a response to give to the seller. So this time period is, you have sent this on to the other agent to say, hey, here's what we're asking for. So kind of keep that in mind when you're thinking about dates, is that everything has to be completed. You have to have the report back in. You have to have time to sit down with your buyer to go over that report, have them look at it and say, hey, this is what we're doing.
If you request additional time, you have to send a form to them.
Yeah, we're going to get to that form. Okay. Let me look back here. We're going to go over this a couple of times, but again, inspection response required, what needs to be done. In Indiana, if you have marked the box that you reserve the right for inspections, you have to give the seller an opportunity to remedy a defect. That means that you've put in your response. I don't care how crazy it is. I don't care if you're asking for $100,000 worth of repairs. You still have to go through the motion of saying, hey, this is what we would like you to fix. A defect. We're going to go over this again, but a defect is anything that is adversely affects the value of the property or a health or safety concern for the occupant of the property. All right, where do we start? So for inspections, this form is in dotloop. This is a Cressy form. I will tell you it has not been updated in 20 years probably. 2015, 20 years. Okay. Is it 2015 or 20? Oh, 20, yeah, maybe 10 years. Okay, so this gives you an idea. This is great to start off with. I will tell you that I used this form a lot when I was starting out in the business because it did remind me of things that maybe I wasn't like, oh yeah, I forgot. I needed to do that septic inspection, or oh shoot. I remember walking through this house and they said something about like absolutely hating termites. I should make sure that they get a termite inspection. They're probably going to know that, but you know, going through these things. Oh, there was a fireplace in there. I should probably ask the buyer if they want to do a fireplace inspection. So I think that this form is still very helpful. Where do I start? I start with a whole house inspection. So I explain to my buyers that this is the overall view of the property from somebody who is a jack of all trades but master of none. They are trained, their training, the classes that they go through and the license is to give them an idea of what doesn't look right. So they're walking through the property, maybe they don't know what's wrong with it. They just know that, hey, if this was a perfect house, this wouldn't be here. So this is what needs to be further examined. So, jack of all trades, master of none. That will give me the clear basis of what we need to look for. If I need to order any additional inspections, so he gets out there and he says, whoa, this electrical looks a mess, then guess what? I'm going to order an electrical inspection. So I start with the whole house. I always get a termite and radon inspection in the city. So those three, the top three, I'm doing on every single property. I will tell you there are agents in this office that will not do a radon if it's on a slab. I still do a radon inspection in a slab because anytime we mess with the soil of the property, we are setting ourselves up for the risk of radon gas coming into the house. To me, it's scarier in a slab because I have messed with the soil. Take out some soil to level it. But we do a septic inspection or a radon inspection from the basement, where most people live on the first and second floor of their house. And we know, science tells us, that the radon is higher in the basement and gets lower as we go up. Well, if you don't have a basement, the highest level of your radon is in your living room, right? Like in your main floor. So for me, I'm still doing a radon on a slab. We've seen it in slab houses in this county, so it's possible. And again, a buyer could say, no, I've looked into radon and I don't really care about it. I don't know why they would, but I'm suggesting to my buyers that they do a radon and termite. I've always done termite. One, because my whole house inspector used to always look at it because she was certified as a termite inspector, and she always thought how silly. She gave it to me, to the buyer for free, because she was like, what would I do just because I'm like in this house and they didn't pay me for it? I'm like, oh, can't look at those termites right there crawling up the wall. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. But now I automatically add all of these things. And we say termite, it's wood destroying insects, by the way. So they're looking for carpenter bees and carpenter ants, all of the things that can destroy wood in your property. So whole house, termite, and radon, always. Now, when we get into a county property or property on well and septic, then I'm also adding my initial inspections, a well inspection. That is testing the strength of the water coming into your house. So, when you turn on the faucet, is the water coming out fast enough? Water quality, so that's different. Water quality or water test is the quality of the water. We're checking for nitrates and bacteria, lead. You do have to specify those things. Most of them know if they're in the county, they're doing a full panel, but in Elkhart, when it's not required, you're going to have to tell them what kind of, you want a full panel water test. And then septic. And I put, is it required with a question mark, because again, we know that there are some properties that it's not required in. Our septic inspections, even on our aquifer, probably not going to be required in the next 4 to 8 years. It's only in this county because we were just trying to make some money. Not we, the county was. So I would imagine we've gotten through this loophole. This is the second loophole that we are getting through. Last year when the state voted on this, they said, wait a minute, St. Joe County, we see what you've been doing up there. No, not okay. We said you cannot require this as a purchase, and they have moved this now into just the aquifer. I would imagine that eventually the state's going to be like, wow, why do you keep doing this? We've told you, St. Joe County, you cannot do this. You have to move forward. So we'll see. But right now, it is required in order to transfer property. So this is where I would start. Again, if my whole house inspector is there in the property and notices something wrong and I have to get additional inspections, I would order those. You'll have that buffer of time as well. Most of the time, if I'm getting my inspections done right away and my inspector's out there, I'm still within my 10 days. I may need my additional days, but not always. Okay, here. But as you can tell, there's tons of different inspections that you can get. Okay. We're going to do some inspection samples. Oh, I don't know what that button is. I'm hitting a really weird button. You are all going to find your own inspector that you like to use and recommend. We do not pick the inspector for your clients. Don't even call out a roofer without talking to your buyer, okay? We hear about complaints in legal about this all the time, about agents saying, oh, hey, the whole house inspector said the roof is bad. I'm going to send my guy out. And you sent out a roofer and something happens. That roofer says it's fine. The buyer moves in. The roof is not fine. Hey, guess who is in trouble? You are, because you picked that roofer. Why didn't you pick the right roofer that would say that the roof failed? So always, that's why we have that inspection authorization form in the first place, is so that they can sign it. They know that you filled this out and said, hey, we're going to use house call for the whole house inspection. We are going to use Mauer well for the well inspection, and you have signed this form at the end of it. I told you that I don't use that form anymore, but I still get it in writing. I still follow up. If I have a phone call with them, I follow up an email. Hey, per our phone call conversation, we're using house call, we're using Mauer well, we're using this person as inspections, and I'm going to order those for you. Good? And they give me back the, yep, I'm good with that. Otherwise, I don't call anybody up. I don't know why this form isn't here. There we go.
So you call these people out?
I set up my whole house inspection because most of the time my buyers are wanting to use who I've recommended to them. I give them options, but I always say Jeremy is my favorite inspector. He did my personal house. I trust him wholeheartedly. Typically they're saying, yeah, I don't know any house inspectors. Yeah, sure, send your guy out. And I want to make sure that when I'm contacting House Call that they know that I want Jeremy. I don't want anybody else that works there. They're all fine. I just like Jeremy. So I do that one, and then I let the title company order everything else. But I just send them an email saying, hey, look, this is what we're doing. We're doing well from Mauer or Steve's Well, and vice versa, or like going down the list, and I send it to title to order them. Some of the inspectors only take a request from title.
Really?
Yeah, because it gets tracked with the closing, so if nobody pays them, they are sending their invoice straight to title to put it on the closing statement. Steve's Well is my favorite well inspector, but since Steve Tate has, passed on his business, rightfully so. I mean, great job for him. He wasn't getting paid on like half of his inspections, and so now you have to pay for it up front. And it's really annoying because you have to go online and the buyer has to fill out this form and pay for it, but they're asking questions that they wouldn't know. How do they access the property? And the buyer's calling me like, how does he access the property? I'm like, oh, well, he has a key box access, so he can just get into it with the key box. But they don't know that. Like, they don't know all these behind the scenes. So I'll tell you, I still use Steve's, and I filled out that form for them, and I pay for it, and then I send my bill to the title company to pay me back. It's annoying, and I have forgotten. So Steve got paid, but I did not, which stinks. I wouldn't do that. I would not recommend doing that. But it does help. So even if you're with your buyer to fill out the Steve's Well and say, hey, okay, this is how it is. Don't worry, they're getting access from here. This is the listing agent. This is who they call to set it up. It's not a perfect system. I get why he did it. I'm not mad about it. It just stinks. Stinks to lose out on $150 too. Don't do that. Okay, so this is a home inspection. They typically come in some sort of form. Again, I use Jeremy with House Call. Don't use Jeremy with House Call. He's going to be too busy for me. And no, I'm kidding. He's a terrible inspector. Just kidding, just kidding. Jeremy's a good friend of mine too, so he would be like, Megan, don't tell people this. So this is a form. All right, so we've talked a little bit about a defect, right? A defect is something that is hazardous to our health and safety or adversely affects the value of the property. I say this over and over and over and over again to my buyers so that they understand that this form can be 40 pages long. There can be tons of maintenance items on it. Those are defects. And then there are actual defects. So I always encourage my buyers to attend their whole house inspection. It's the only one that they really need to attend. Because this report is wild, right? Like, there is so much information on here. And I always tell them, in black and white, these things seem really scary. And there are times when I read these reports, and I've been doing this for 13 years, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the house is falling apart. And I get in front of my buyer, and they're like, no, Jeremy said that this is a real easy fix. This is who you call. Get this part of it inspected. But no, he was fine with it. I'm like, okay. I call Jeremy sometimes, and I'm like, that's fine? And he's like, yes, Megan, it's fine. And I'm like, okay, all right, I'm good. But because this looks so scary in black and white, and then when you're in the property, they also learn so much about their house. So for first-time home buyers who are walking through the property and understand how to change their furnace filter, where that furnace filter is, how to check the size of it, how to look at the air conditioner, all of these things, where their water shutoff is. I kid you not, I have gotten a call from somebody whose basement was flooding, called me to ask where their shutoff was. And I said, girl, you bought that house 2 years ago. I have no idea where your water shutoff. That's actually not true. I said, hey, go down into your basement. Just because that's how my brain works. I can walk through every property in my head that I've ever sold. And I'm like, hey, walk through your basement. Do you remember the water heater is in that back right corner? They're like, yes. And I'm like, right behind that is the water shutoff. And they were like, seriously? I'm like, yes, just go there, turn it all off, and call a plumber. So, but most of the time, you're not going to remember all of these things, right? So having this information is really important, and having them walk through the property, understanding the makeup of their house, and also being able to ask questions about some of the things, right? So there are going to be things on here that they are going to need to know. So tons of photos. Hopefully your inspector is taking lots and lots of photos and explaining some of these things. What I like about these now are they're so interactive, so there's like different parts of this that they can tell you, like he couldn't get through the whole thing, right, because he couldn't walk through the whole property or whatever it is, the foundation. He couldn't see the back corner because of all their stuff. Like that's going to be on here. It's going to talk a little bit about standards as far as like what they're looking for, what the standard is, what should be good, and maybe what's not, like a minor crack. So lots of information here. And this is how we ask for repairs as well, because he's going to note something. This is a terrible inspection. I should have pulled up another one. Okay, so this one is a different color because this is something that he's recommending. House call puts things in, and most inspectors put things into 3 categories: a maintenance, recommendation, and defect, or hazardous. They call it something different. Those items in red are most likely a defect, right? Those are going to be the items that you're going to ask for. And then some of these things in these recommendations are still defects. They just may not be as important as some of the other things. And we're going to kind of talk about putting your list into perspective. But so this one, there was no sign of servicing on the furnace and air conditioner. So this was something. In this house, we did ask for this to be serviced and cleaned. And we asked the seller to make any repairs noted when the HVAC technician was there. To me, this is a defect. You need heat. Can't see a cracked heat exchanger on an older furnace without an inspection of it, and your whole house inspector is not doing that. So I want a HVAC technician out here telling me that it's fine. No carbon monoxide in the house. And again, so for the AC as well, this was part of that. Windows, like this was a recommendation. This window latch was broken. This would also be in here if the window couldn't open on an older home. So it's something that we just fixed on a seller's property because there was no egress for kids to get out. And the buyer rightfully was like, hey, we don't like that. Like, if there was a fire, our kids need to be able to get out of the house. And so had to fix the things. I will tell you, we asked for this. It didn't get fixed. This is a moisture stain. I told them they were never going to do this. This is, you can barely see it. There is a bubble in this where water had hurt the laminate flooring, this wood flooring in here. It's not laminate. It's like actual hardwood. This was put down as a recommendation. To me, this is not a defect. If, again, the seller kind of laughed at us, and I would have laughed at them if this was my seller, because this isn't a defect. This is not adversely affecting the value of the property. Absolutely not. 2, this is not causing any safety concerns. But again, we're not inspectors, so like, again, calling an inspector. If I thought something wasn't, I might call Jeremy and say, hey, help me out. How am I writing this? How am I fighting for my buyer on this repair that you put down here as a recommendation? Like, what is it that's making this unsafe? Like, give me some more information. So when the agent's calling me, I can say, well, actually, this moisture stain has cracked this wood. So if there anything else would spill in here, whatever, the water will damage the foundation. I don't know, but I'm going to have that like information to fight this repair. It didn't get taken care of. My buyers were fine. They moved forward. They had 3 things on this report. So, but again, this is what we're looking at. Tons and tons of pages, lots of things that are not going to be defects, that are going to be maintenance issues that you're going to ask for. So that's a whole house. Not going to lie, have not had a septic inspection in a long time. You hardly do anything on the county. Oh, perfect. And this would be the inspector that I would recommend. This is Shane. Shane does a lot of stuff with the county, working on inspections. He was a big, he's always been a big push for getting rid of this required septic and kind of fighting the county on a few things. County hates dry wells, so they fail every septic on this. He's worked really hard to change some forms over the time. Good guy. Also, that's a cost of an inspection. Inspection costs are going to be different with every inspector. I use House Call as well because they do it based on square footage, and not a lot of inspectors do that. And so I feel like it's very unfair for my buyer who's buying a 900 square foot house to be paying the same as a buyer that just bought Cary Glen that's a 5,000 square foot house. Like, that makes no sense. Like, the inspector is spending a lot more time in a house at 5,000 square feet than they are 1,000 square feet. And so I appreciate that they give that. Okay, so septic. This is what a septic inspection looks like. These forms have changed. Now he gets to put them on his own thing. So he writes on here that this is what would be required. The health department in St. Joe County does, they're the ones calling the shots on what kind of septic gets installed, what gets repaired. They're making the final decision. So even a septic company that's installing it is waiting for the county to tell them what to put in. We get soil samples, we get all the information, we give it to the county, and the county says, nope, you need a mound system, or yep, you can just do the field system. Yes, you can do this based on this information. So they call the shots. That's why it says, ask the county what we need to do. This one was not easy. It was meant to be easy, meant to be a sealing the tank, and we had somebody come out and seal the tank. It failed. She told me that it never fails, and we were the exception to the rule. So then the tank had to be replaced. Yeah. It never fails, is what she told me. And I said, hey, I don't want you to say that to the buyers of this property or my sellers. I had the seller on this case. I would prefer that you don't use that language that it never fails, because that worries me. And she goes, oh, well, I can, because I know what I'm doing and it always works. And then she had to call us and tell us, actually, it didn't work this time and you're going to need a new tank. But this will go into information about what the septic is, where the well is, what they found, again, photos, and what needs to be taken care of. I'm going through this fast because this was a pretty easy one. Your septic inspection should have something that looks like this. They have to measure the distance between the well and the septic. These lines are where the septic field is and where the tank is. So again, in this house, this was the problem, was the tank. And a map, so that we knew where the aquifer was. Okay. Radon. This is also why I use House Call, because I can send them out and they do whole house, radon, termite, a water quality test, and I have one person that I order all of those things from. It just makes it a little easier. A lot of inspectors do that. So, and I use other inspectors too. There's a handful of them that are decent in this area. There's a few that I absolutely cannot stand. This is a radon inspection. Radon gets sent for at least 48 hours, and we take an average. It needs to be under 4.0. That's the EPA standard for radon. I sat in a class one time from somebody that does radon testing, and they said that anything over 4.0, every point is like smoking a pack of cigarettes without a filter on it a day. And I thought, oh, so serious. So radon is important. If you have a radon mitigation system, this has to be under 1. And again, this is an average. You can see where it like peaks. Some important things to know about radon is that it is affected by weather quite a lot. So if you have a vacant property, your radon is probably going to be higher because we have trapped that radon gas into the property. In a house that people live in, they're opening doors, they're opening windows, they're coming and going, and some of that air is escaping the house. If the weather is terrible, so I think it says it on these reports. It should tell you, if it's not on this report, it's on the other report where it says, like this tells you that they ran this one for 98 hours, so he left it here a lot longer. Should say the weather on one of these reports. Like where he's putting it. I think it's on this one, but you can't really see it. When the barometric pressure, so if it's storming out, your radon is going to be higher because the barometric pressure keeps our air here on Earth or closer to the ground, and so that will make these tests go higher. So there are times when I have tested radon twice if that radon system was put in there in a vacant house for 48 hours and the whole 48 hours it was storming and my radon levels are super, super high, we may retest that. On a day where it's nice and sunny, especially if it's like 4.1, right? Like I'm trying to reduce that 0.1 to get it under so we don't do a mitigation system. May pay for a second test as a seller's agent. Radon mitigation is actually really, really easy. We basically pump the air from the basement out into the atmosphere. Right now, they're kind of expensive because of tariffs. Everything comes from China, of course, and so they're really high on the machine that goes into the attic, the actual fan. And so all of our inspectors have gone from like $900 to $1,200. That's kind of where we're at right now. $1,200. One of my clients called themselves. This is also why I call everybody because when they hear it's from an agent, it's like they know we have a pretty good understanding of cost on these things, even if you don't. They just assume that. My client ended up calling, somebody recommended a radon mitigation company for them, and it was like $2,500, and we got it for $950. So I was like, yeah, well, they would never given me a $2,500 quote because I would have laughed at them. Like, no, I'm not giving, no, it's a $1,000 machine. Like, I know what this costs. So just to kind of give you a little bit of a heads up on that. All right, so whole house, we saw this. This is, I'm going to show you a termite. Maybe. Nope. I know I have one from him. Sorry, guys.
I have one.
Do you have one?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Can email it to you.
Mm-hmm. All termite inspections look the same. They use the same form. It says, yes, there are visible signs of woods destroying insects. No, there is not. If there are visible signs, then they detail where they found it in the property. You guys get to see all my email? Fine. I'm sure it'll come through. Okay, so again, general, every whole house inspection is going to look just a little bit different because they all use a different system. I think you get it.
So it's at the bottom.
At the bottom. I think Aardvark's another company that does all of them. Yep. All right. Thank you. This is a wood destroying insects or a termite inspection. There was visible signs. So he noted what he saw, termite damage to the basement stairs. And then he wrote down where he found it. Oh, this is inaccessible. Sorry, this is where he couldn't see. He could not see a few areas in the garage. No treatment was recommended in this one. If he would have recommended, it would have been here. So this is a termite inspection.
So they found termites, but they didn't recommend treatment?
Yeah, which is weird.
Well, I think it was already.
It's just damage. He found treatment as well. Yeah. Oh yes, it has been treated. A portion of it has been treated for wood destroying excess. So he saw that already. That's good. Okay. Bless you. Okay. All right, so then we get to a buyer's inspection response. So we've done all of our inspections. We've done any additional inspections that we need. If you are exercising your right to your extra time, this is the form, buyer's inspection response, and you click this, check this box, which says buyer's exercising additional time to order, retrieve, or respond writing inspections. Because the initial inspection report reveals a condition that requires further examination. No seller response is required. This is all you have to do. I will tell you, sometimes I send an email, but make sure you have something in writing that states that you are using your extra time. This form or an email. Okay, so this is what we do. We've used our extra time. Now we're ready to put in a response to the seller. So you're working with the buyer. Again, a defect is defined by a condition that would affect the health and safety of the occupant or adversely affect the value of the property. So we put in date, property address, we check the box that this is what the buyer will accept the property if we do this, right? We'll accept the property if the seller has an electrician that replaces the GFCI outlet that's not working. The roof is replaced, the septic tank is replaced or repaired. We list all of that in here. The seller shall respond on or before. If I have something, again, the state's going to change, so every case is going to be different. If I am sending a pretty lengthy list, I'm going to give a seller a good amount of time to respond to that. Typically, at least a week of business days to get contractors out, to give them estimates. They can call and get different opinions, sometimes more if I think we're in a tricky situation. I just had a oil tank that we thought might have been buried in the yard, and nobody does that around here. It took me forever to find that. We did a billion extensions. But in that case, I was like, hey, we're going to need more time to investigate this, to have somebody come out and look at it. If I'm asking for radon mitigation and something that we can all say, oh yeah, that's about $1,000. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm giving them a few days to say yes or no to that. They still might want to get an opinion about price. They might want to call that guy that's $2,500 to say, hey, your $1,000 quote looked really great. A lot of times when I'm doing inspections, the inspector that I'm using can also, like a roof inspection, can give a quote on the roof. So I'm usually, if I'm sending that, like I'm sending radon in a roof, but I'm also giving you the estimate for the new roof is $5,500. They can still call somebody, so I'm still going to give them a couple of days, but they don't need a week to find a roofer and call 4 different companies. They at least have an idea of what the cost would be. So that does change for me as far as what I write into here, but typically I'm looking at a week for the seller to respond. Okay, so the seller has to say, yes, I'm accepting to do all of these things up here, or no, here's my response to that. And again, items noted in a seller's disclosure. So if the seller's disclosure said that the roof was bad and you did not put that in your offer, you cannot ask for it now. You can, but they don't have to do it. They've already told you this. Routine maintenance, so some of the things like comes up in these inspection responses, replacing furnace filters, batteries, and smoke detectors, that sort of thing. And then minor repairs do not warrant termination with the buyer getting their earnest money back. Some additional forms. If your inspection response is so long that you need an additional form, you would do the addendum. So we're adding to the inspection response. You could use this form. This is a request for extension of time to respond 2 inspections from the buyer or the seller can fill this form out. So if the seller needs more time, this is a form you would use. If the buyer needs more time, even after those additional days that they've used, if they still need more time, this is the form you could use. And then we get back to the seller's response. So yes, they've said we're not going to do all of those things. We're going to do these things. So we're not going to do the radon, but we will give you that new roof. That's where they would do it here. They can also agree to be unwilling or unable to do those repairs. They can reject the buyer's initial inspection response. I don't think I can make this bigger. I can. Nope. Nope. Okay. And then they can terminate and proceed towards, or terminate, not terminate, or proceed to closing. And then the seller rejects buyer's subsequent inspection response. See attached mutual release. Hopefully you don't get to that point, but it does happen. I always talk to my buyers about prioritizing their list that goes on this. So we talk a lot about like, okay, we want to be prioritizing this list, not letting the seller prioritize this list. And because a seller is going to say, look, I did 90% of your request. I just didn't take care of the crumbling foundation that's going to cost me $20,000. I'm doing all of these other things. Like, can't you be happy with this? I mean, maybe they're not. But I want to prioritize that list. So if I'm looking at this with a buyer, we're saying, hey, the big deal here is that foundation, or the big deal is the roof. Let's make sure that we're not adding a bunch of teeny little things on here that's taking away money that could be applied towards the big thing that's wrong with this property. And having conversations about what's going to be a non-negotiable for your buyer. Is the buyer going to walk away if the foundation doesn't get repaired? Are they walking away if that GFCI outlet is not going to be repaired? Are you going to be okay with moving forward? And then I prioritize the list that way. This, to me, writing a contract and getting a contract accepted is the easiest negotiation you have in the contract. This is the hardest part. So this is where your skills are really going to come into play as far as an agent goes, on working through inspections, educating your buyers on what defects are, getting them contractors that maybe are more reasonable or can walk them through like what can be done now versus later, that sort of thing. To me, this is where you're going to shine as an agent, is when you start to understand repairs, things that maybe aren't that big of a deal, having contractors in your back things, and having the right people in your corner that aren't scaring your buyers, or that are scaring your buyers when they need to be scared about a property. I don't know. That's why I like Jeremy too. He's so easy. No, he's not scary. That's why I like him. He's so even the whole time, and he, everything can be fixed. It's just at what cost. And so having somebody that goes into it with that mindset of like, all right, this is just the way this house was built, or this is just this. And yes, the mold seems scary, but mold can be treated. And, do you have a great mold person in the back of your mind that you can call right away and say, hey, can you get out to this property, look at this mold? Nobody should be using the word mold, by the way, unless they're certified to use the word mold. So you're going to see organic growth in any of the whole house inspector reports. If you see organic growth, it's probably time to call in somebody who is certified to look at that. My guy, I love Jake Environmental. He hardly ever tests mold because he knows what he's looking at, and there's mold everywhere. There's mold right now in this room, just so you know. Like, it's full of mold, and yeah, that sounds so scary. And so, like how to treat it, what's okay, what is not okay, those sort of things, and how we take care of it. Lysol, right. Just throw some bleach on it. It'll be fine. Okay, so if the seller is unwilling or unable to remedy, the buyer has two choices. They can terminate the contract, or they can proceed towards closing with an understanding that they are accepting the property at that point in its current condition. Those are the options. Inspections are where deals usually fall apart, and where we fight for earnest money, right? When we start to talk about these things. We have to give the seller a opportunity to fix these, but the contract does state that it has to be satisfactory to the buyer. So when we go back through here, this is why understanding this contract and all contracts that you are signing is so important, is that you need to be the expert on this form. And so when you are saying, hey, wait a minute, it's not that the seller said all of this is okay. My buyer has to be satisfied with your remedy of this. So you putting some, as seen on TV, flex tape on that leaking pipe may have felt good to you.
That stuff works really good, I will say. I'm a flex steel supporter.
Yes.
And I understand where you're going with this.
I've actually walked into a property where that is how they fixed a leak in the under the sink, was with flex tape. And we walked in and said, what is this? This is not satisfactory to the buyer. This is a remedy that does not fit our definition of what our contract states. We would like a plumber. I will tell you that when I'm writing up buyer's inspection responses, I am finishing every one of them with all repairs are to be done by a licensed and bonded contractor. Because I don't want the handy homeowner to say, hey, I can fix that GFCI outlet. I could buy it at Lowe's and put it in myself, and then they, don't hook up a wire correctly and the house, burns up. They may come back to us and say, hey, I'm not a licensed electrician. I used to do it. I was licensed at a period of time. Can I do the GFCI outlet? And then I could, coach my buyers and work with my buyers to say, hey, are you okay with that? Like, he does commercial. A GFCI is really easy. Can he do this one outlet for you? Sure. So there are times when, yes, a seller would be doing some of these things. But most of the time, my initial response is licensed and bonded contractor to complete all repairs.
When the buyer sends the buyer inspection response form, is the seller able to withdraw from the contract?
If they are unwilling to make any repairs, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, if they're unwilling to make any repairs, can they withdraw, or do they just have to say unwilling to make repairs? I'm still in this, but
Yeah, I'm just not doing it. Yeah, which is this box, right? Seller's unable or unwilling to make any corrections requested by the buyer. You're going to check that box and you're going to send it on. Now that buyer could be like, are you nuts? Like, there's, black mold through the whole house. We can't buy this house with this. Or they can say, all right, fine, I guess we're paying for that. And they'll move forward. So it's possible. I would imagine that if they're unwilling to make any repairs, we're going to be looking at, a mutual release situation. And that's why it does say this subsequent inspections, see attached mutual release. So they can send it back and say, no, we still want you to do the mold. Then the seller can send this back with a rejection and the mutual release. Like, again, not doing this. Here's the mutual release to terminate this contract. What happens to earnest money? I mean, it's my buyers. I'm fighting for the buyer to get back their earnest money because we identified a defect, according to the contract, something that is, health or safety or adversely affects the value of the property. We gave you the opportunity. You said no. Why I would get the earnest money back. Okay? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is there any way, and I apologize, I missed the first half hour, but
No.
is there a way you can order just specific, like nature mechanical inspections and waive a lot of stuff? Because I personally, if I got a house that's 35, 40 years old,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want a nail pop coming back on an inspection. That's just gonna tick me off.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
So some of the houses, like over Mishawaka, these things are 80 to 100 years old.
Mm-hmm.
What's acceptable and what's not acceptable as far as like a home inspection with something like that?
Yeah. So again, I'm going to always go back to the contract because it outlines what a defect is, which is it's hazardous to your health or safety or adversely affects the value of the property. Contracts, if you haven't noticed, are pretty ambiguous, right? They give a lot of room for interpretation on some of these things. Could somebody make the case that a nail pop adversely affects the value? Adversely? I mean, I think about everyone in this room would be like, no way. Like, is it in every single room, at every single seam of the drywall? Well, maybe that's adversely affecting the value of the property because then I'm having somebody come out, mud, tape, repaint. I'm looking at thousands and thousands of dollars. Now, to a buyer buying a $100,000 home, is that adversely affecting the value? Yeah, I would say so. So could I make that argument as a buyer's agent? Sure. Could I make the opposite on the seller side of things, going, are you kidding me? That nail pop is not doing anything to your health or safety. You walked through that property, you didn't die. You know, like, I've been living here, didn't die, you know. Could I make that case? Yeah, I think so. I think I could. There are plenty of agents who are ordering just major mechanicals. I would say that that's really up to your buyer to say, yes, I'm okay with having HVAC checked, electrical. I'm going to have individual inspections. I know that there are agents who do this because I've had listings where I've had an electrician come in, and then a plumber come in, and an HVAC guy come in, a roofer come in. Drive sellers nuts, right? Because instead of having one whole house inspector come in, they're making the house available to 12 inspectors. But yeah, I mean, you could definitely be recommending that to your buyers. I would just make sure that they understand the difference between what a whole house inspector does and what these individual inspectors do. A lot of agents love it because they're specialized in that. I said before that a whole house is a jack of all trades but master of none. It's always how I describe what they do. They're not licensed electricians, so they may know a thing or two about the electric and know what's wrong or what doesn't look 100% right, but they may not be able to tell you how to correct it or how dangerous it is. One thing I was going to point out in the whole house inspectors is that everything, even a maintenance item, is going to have a disclaimer. You should follow up with so-and-so. You should follow up with this person, an electrician, a plumber, a handyman, a licensed contractor. They are going to qualify that entire inspection that way. It's also why I think it's understand who inspectors are, get opinions from other agents to say, hey, who do you like, who do you not like, what are some of the things you've seen. Do not attend an inspection with your buyer or on behalf of your buyer. We talked a little bit about interpretation of some of these forms, and like in black and white it looks so scary, and calling the inspector and they're like, that's fine. I don't want to be responsible for saying, well, I heard that he said that was fine, and next thing we know the furnace is blowing up in their house, right? Like we're not going to be responsible for it. I think for legality reasons, do not attend. That is like strongly suggested in the state of Indiana not to attend an inspection. I will tell you, my first experience with a home inspector was on a property I already owned. I became a real estate agent. Jamie was giving out a discount on whole houses, and I said, cool, you want to come over to my house? Like, I want to follow around a home inspector? That sounds awesome. And she inspected my own personal home that I had never, because I had never been to an inspection before. We bought that house as cash, and okay, great, we're just going to own this property. It was a foreclosure, so inspections wouldn't have really mattered, one of those things. So like, it was nice walking through it again as a buyer saying, oh, okay, that's what that is, or yikes, really wish I would have known that before I bought this house, There was a few of those things. But it was also how I knew what she was like in a whole house inspection. I knew that she was really detailed and spent a lot of time communicating and talking through things. So, I mean, they're not cheap. I don't know if I would recommend doing it all the time, but if you're trying to find an inspector, get them on your own house, see what they're like. I don't know. But I always get feedback from my buyers too, like, hey, did you walk through the property? How was the communication? Did you did you learn something? What was this like? that sort of thing. And then knowing that I can call my inspector, I can text Jeremy and say, hey, you inspected, 30th Street. This is what came up. Can you call me about this later? And he always will call me back and say, hey, let me talk you through this. Or, hey, could you go back over this? Can you call my buyer now and walk them through that again? Because they were really scared. You're making it sound like it may not be a big deal. Could you, call them again? Can we go through this inspection with you? And a good whole house inspector would do that, right? Because they want to stand by what they're telling you and looking for.
Megan, how do you feel about a seller having a home inspection done before they put it on the market?
So I will tell you that the last few years we got away from inspections almost entirely. I don't know how inspectors made it through the business because through COVID everything was selling so fast and everybody was waiving inspections or wild. I will tell you that right before this happened, the market was a little bit competitive. And I was suggesting that to a lot of my sellers. Hey, why don't we get an inspection? Why don't we find out what we're up against? It might make this easier for buyers to understand why we're priced the way we are because the property's in fantastic condition. It might give you a sense of being able to control some of the things that you fix and saying, hey, I'm going to tell you right up front, I'm not doing this outlet. I'm going to keep saying GFCI outlets. I'm not going to do that GFCI outlet, but I did all the rest of this stuff. I will tell you that the last house that I sold, we did an inspection beforehand, and that's what I did. We walked through and said, okay, we're going to do this, this, and this, and this. We're not going to do the rest of it. This is where we're at. This is kind of silly. You're probably going to redo that entire bathroom, so why would I replace the faucet that's leaking? That sort of thing. And so I don't think it hurts. Septic inspections, I think, are a great idea to do ahead of time, especially if you're going to be in one of these required aquifer properties, because I think it gives you the opportunity to know $30,000 is coming, or a $50,000 mound system is going to be required. That's going to dictate a lot of things. It also helps with the speed and process, right? So if your sellers are like, we need to make this quick, nothing about septics are quick, right? The inspections take a little bit to get somebody out there. The county takes forever to get back. Soil sampling takes a while. And so those sort of things, yeah, I love to see septic inspections already completed before I list. Just easy. And it's going to have to be done, right? If we can't transfer this property without that septic, don't you want to know that? You want to know where the 30... Yeah.
That you know ahead because most people don't like surprises.
No. And yeah, sellers love to feel like they're a little bit more in control of the process and there aren't scary surprises. That waiting period is really hard. And like I said, this is the hardest part of this transaction is inspections typically. So I think it's important. I get inspections on new construction. I don't care if that house was just put up today. People are humans, right? It's always the easiest inspection. The last one I did with Century, the builders have to do a 2-year warranty in Indiana. That just got changed. It's 2 full years of a warranty on certain materials in the house. And so they're not idiots, right? They can do all the work. There's no emotion tied into this. And so the last time I did it, I handed David Saratsky, I printed the report out and handed it to him. He goes, yeah, Megan, I'm going to take care of all of that. Didn't have to make anything official. He just walked through and blue taped every item that was on the inspection and had it fixed for the buyer. I list properties for builders, and that's what we do. Yeah, send it over to us. We'll just go through the laundry list and get all those little things done, right? Sometimes it's nail pops, to be honest, but when you're buying new construction, it's a little different, right? A little different. But I also will tell you that I coach a lot of buyers through properties, right? We talk about things like, hey, the 100-year-old home is not new construction, right? There are going to be quirky things there. If that's not your vibe, if that's not what you're willing to deal with, then the 100-year-old house may not be the house for you. So let's talk of those quirky things. Floors are probably not going to be level. Walls are not square. There are going to be things that are going to be odd in this house. What are you willing to live with? What are you willing to give away? I think that is a lot of our job, right? Is coaching our buyers and sellers through what they're willing to accept, right? We're not making these decisions for them. We're just trying to help them get to the finish line. If this is the house that you want, what are you? And then having good people in your corner to help kind of move those things along.
Kind of piggybacking off his question about the individual inspectors, like HVAC, electrical, all those things. How much are those typically to get? Is it going to be? I mean, I'm assuming it's going to be more expensive than just getting a check.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because those are licensed, in that field. They know nothing but electrical. That electrician you're going in there could care less about the pipe that's, pouring out water over here in their eyesight because they don't. Oh, okay, water, yuck. My job is electrical. So yes, it's going to be more expensive. This is actually why I like a whole house inspector to go out first so that I can say, hey, electrician, I don't want your full house inspection. What I want you to go look at is they're saying that something is wrong with the panel. Something in the panel looks wrong. There's double tapped wires, this sort of thing. There's a wire coming out of it. Could you go and look at the panel? I need you to look at the panel. Typically, they're going out there and quoting work. They may not charge you. It may be $60. It may be $75. It may be a little bit cheaper than having them go through the entire house to look at every single outlet, to check every light bulb, to turn on the light switch and find where it goes, check the panel. They're going to be doing a whole lot more in a whole house inspection of the electrical than going out and just looking at one thing that might be wrong.
You could almost pitch it as a business opportunity for them.
Sometimes. A lot of my electricians, I will tell you that I have an electrician that I've used for 13 years, well, maybe 10. A property needed electrical work. He quoted the electrical work off of the whole house. He noticed knob and tube in the attic and said, well, I don't really know how much that's going to cost yet because I don't know the extent of it yet. I'd have to do an inspection for you, which is different than my quote, and that's going to be X amount of dollars. It was like $125. I had the seller. The buyer's agent was like, is the seller going to pay for that? No. First of all, inspections are the burden of the buyer. If you want that inspection, you can pay for that. But both of us had, both the other agent, Julie Robbins, and I both have a really great relationship with Wes. So we called him back and we're like, Wes, come on, help us out here. And he said, oh, fine. For you guys, I'll go out there. And he did the inspection for free and didn't charge either one of the buyer or the seller. It ended up being $400. It was one piece of knob and tube. So frustrating. We delayed forever on this one piece of knob and tube that was, $400. But could you imagine doing an inspection for $125 for a $400 repair? Like, oh my gosh, like this doesn't seem like it weighs out. But that's why it's important to, one, have great relationships with contractors, have great relationships with other agents, right? Like Julia could have had the relationship and I didn't as the listing agent with Wes, and then one of us is calling him, kind of asking him, right? Like that's helpful. And so she was willing to do it, and I was willing to piggyback off of her saying, hey, Wes, like, do you remember all that work I sent you last year? Could you help us out on this one, So I think that that's really important. It's going to be more expensive to piecemeal all of this together than it is for that whole house. You are definitely going to get a much better inspection of the electrical with an electrician. You're going to get a much better inspection of the plumbing with an actual plumber. But I always tell my buyers, like, this is the starting line, right? We're going to build up from here. We may need a roof inspection. We may need electrical, plumbing after this. Yeah, kind of helps. Yep. Okay, so we've gotten through this. We're moving forward. Oh, that's really it for me. I put this together right before I walked down here. I was
Like after this,
I'm done. It was funny because I was sitting with Fabian, and he goes, Megan, I really need to go set up your computer. And I'm like, I'm almost done. I'm doing question and answer one right now. Okay, inspections. Again, what I think is really important, having lots of conversations with your buyers about what they're going to see in their report. Do not attend the inspection. Make sure that you are calling all the right people. I always tell people, hey, I'm not an inspector. We need to get that looked at by this person. This has been my experience in the past. But if you want it, it needs to be done here. When you're writing your inspection response, you have to have it backed up by a licensed inspector. Okay? So their uncle who said that the roof was bad because he roofed when he was, 20 years old as a side job is not licensed to say that, so you cannot base that on his word, right? We need a report. It's got to be followed up. So when I'm writing an inspection response, this is a great way. When I'm writing this inspection response, I'm always referencing home inspection. I am always referencing the, what was it? HVAC, right? Heating. I'm referencing this. 8, heating needs to be done. I think he does numbers. 8.1.1, equipment. So I would write in here, seller to have licensed HVAC tech to, service, clean and service the furnace and AC according to, and I'd put in parentheses, see inspection item 8.1.1, so they can easily reference this. You're going to be sending this whole house inspection with your inspection response. So then I'm saying, hey, radon mitigation system to be installed, in parentheses, see radon inspection. I'm putting that in there. So everything is here is getting linked to this. So it's really, really helpful to put the number behind this inspection so that when the seller is looking at it, they can easily go, okay, they said 8, I got to go to page 8. I need to look at, the roof is 3.1.1. Okay, this is where they got that from. Everything gets sent along with the inspection response. Good? Okay, that's really all.
How do most sellers pay for this stuff? Do they pay at closing a lot of times, or do they just use a charge card or something and pay it off after closing, or
Yes.
how do they normally do that?
That is a great question because that actually will lead me into 2 things. One, you can pay for most repairs at closing. So you can contact the contractor to say, hey, Todd Sikorsky, I need you to put this furnace in. I'll make sure that your invoice gets sent to the title company and the title company will pay you. A lot of times this is really important because then we have like kind of a trail for it. It's on the closing statement. We can say, hey, the HVAC was paid for. It's on this statement that you signed at closing. I think this is also a great point. A few years ago, an agent in our office got a listing because the sellers were like, we have no money. Like, we can't make any repairs. So they were like, we're going to sell the house as is. So the first agent sold it as is. It was written all over the thing. So, of course, it's scaring away buyers who have all these options at that point, should go look for something else. Didn't sell the house. An agent here in the office ended up going to him, and they're like, tell me about the money, because I wrote your net sheet up and it looks like you are going to, profit quite a bit. Your equity is at $100,000. Why do you want to sell as is? Well, we couldn't pay for a furnace right now. I don't have any cash. And she goes, oh, I can solve that problem for you. If something were to come up in that inspection, we could have it paid through out of your proceeds, out of this $100,000 that you have. You're not pulling this money out of pocket. Great, so now this house that was blasted, seller will make no repairs, it's as is, removed that information from the listing, sold it right away. There were very little repairs, only because I knew this because we had the buyer. And I said, wow, it's crazy that we didn't notice this house before. And we had this conversation. She goes, well, actually, I had to coach my sellers on how to list their property. They didn't get that information with their last agent. And there was very little repairs. It was like one plumbing thing. So they could have sold this house a long time ago, still walked away with all this equity, and got to move forward. Instead, they, held on to it. So yes, most repairs are getting paid for out of closing. I will tell you, I have a seller right now who said, don't send that new furnace to the title company. I want to put that on my credit card. I want the points for it. Like, we're about to go on a trip, and I want all those points on there. I'm going to pay it off right away.
Wait, they're the buyer? Do we really
My
want
seller.
them?
No, my seller paid for it.
You don't want them buying.
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, that actually makes sense. If you're going to spend $5,000 on a furnace, that's a lot of money to like point-wise, like, okay, I get it. So yeah, sometimes they're doing it that way.
I'm glad you made that point, about this happening closing, because a seller could actually be leaving money on the table by doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because someone didn't tell them about it and how they could access their,
Their equity, yeah.
their house at closing. Yeah, they could be leaving several $1,000s on the table.
Yeah.
Are you saying because they have to accept the lower price on the house?
Yes, exactly. If they just says, as is.
Good catch.
Somebody might have came in, yesterday listed at 200, and somebody offered them 185 and they took it. But really, the house is in great shape.
They needed a plumbing.
They probably would have got 200, 205 for it. And so they lost maybe 10 grand in equity, right off the bat.
Sometimes time alone costs money too.
Yes, it does.
Depending on if you have a mortgage or your taxes are coming up due or things like that,
Right. I had a question on that too, is like if, let's say you guys agree to the repairs, $15,000 repair, you agree to have it to be, invoiced and paid to the contractor at closing. What happens if after the repair's done, the bank says we're not gonna finance you and the deal falls apart? Who gets paid then? Or how does it?
Yeah, this is really tricky. So,
I told you he had the questions.
yeah. A mechanical lien would always be put on the property, not the person. So if a repair was done, nobody got paid for it, that contractor has the right to put a lien on the property. So when they go to sell, they didn't sell with this buyer, guess what? They're going to pay for it the next time because it's going to be a lien on the property that the title will have to clear. There are risks to just about every part of this, right? It's just kind of gauging how much risk you're taking on. We do a lot of repairs after closing. Don't tell any lender that. But we do that, right? And then the buyer assumes some additional risk that they don't open up that nail pop and to fix and they find mold everywhere. Like now the buyer is responsible for it. If we would have had it done before closing, you open up that wall and find mold, guess what? That buyer's gonna be like, hey, seller, you got mold you gotta fix in here. But we do that. There are times that, yes, you could put on that brand new roof and the buyer's financing falls through and the seller's paying for that and saying, oh man, that stinks. Hopefully they can recoup it on with the next sale, but maybe not. They have a new roof that they can, flaunt. Yeah, brand new roof as of yesterday. Please buy our house. So yes, there are some risks to that. A lender's always going to want repairs done before closing and on the closing statement. That's why we don't actually don't ever send a buyer's inspection response or anything dealing with inspections to your lender, ever, 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 because they'll start requiring a lot of things. It happens. I'm going to make another point about time, just because this stuff drives me absolutely nuts, and since I have a captive audience, I can tell you. So when we talk about time here, right, I said this number is always different. This number changes because sometimes I have a cash buyer who wants to close in 14 days. If I was told every single time to put homeowner's insurance at 15 days, outside of the contract, I'm going to close in 14 days, but they have 15 days to get homeowner's insurance? No, that doesn't make any sense. I will tell you out of the 13 years how often I see inspection periods going much longer than the contract date. You're telling me we're closing in 30 days, you put 25 days and then 7 additional days. I'm going to give you past closing. No, I'm not going to. I will tell you I counter this as a listing agent constantly. I did it this weekend where I was like, no, I'm not giving you all of these days. So know your contract, read through these. Don't ever put what you were told in one of these classes in this. Make sure you are reading over this contract and you know it inside and out, because guess what? Your fiduciary responsibility to your client says that you do understand this contract, that you have read it through. I was very guilty of this, that I sat through these classes and wrote in what somebody told me and had, oh yeah, I get it. I read the headline. This is an inspection. See? Duh. And one day I read through something and I was like, that I have been writing this number into this contract or this into this contract, and that actually makes no sense. Who told me that? And I remember going through, like, back through one of my classes and going, wow, okay, yeah, nope, doesn't make any sense, got to change that. So read over your contracts, read every single one, anything that you're putting together, read it, know it. Lori Ladow, actually, I sat through a class with her one day, and she was mad about somebody not knowing a contract, and I was like, I don't think I know my contract. Lori's so scary, I'm going to read my contract now. And she's not scary. She's just so smart is the thing. It's not that she is scary. She is a genius when it comes to contracts and knowing her contract. And so I read through it and said, oh, yeah, I get it now. I get why I would not put 20 days for inspections when I'm closing in 14 days. That's silly.
That's kind of ridiculous.
Yes. Yeah. So know what you're doing. Ask lots of questions. Remember that your buyer's making decisions. You are just helping them, coaching them through. Don't ever call an inspector out without them okaying it. I think there's like last year alone, I think I heard of like 3 grievance complaints to the state over this. So don't do it. It's become so easy, right, when we're talking about this roof needs looked at. Well, I know a roofer. I'm just going to call him out and have him go look at this property again. Just make sure you're communicating that with your buyer. Ordering inspections, we talked a little bit about this. If you are ordering inspections, again, I do most of mine, but you can also, if you had this form filled out properly, that your whole house was done by house call, you could send this to your title company and they will order it for you, which is really nice and very helpful. So you can just say, hey, processor, could you please help me with these inspections? And they'll order all of it. And I'm always using the title company. The title company, most processors are a wealth of knowledge. So when you get to a repair that you might not know about, sometimes if I don't have a guy for it, I will call my processor and say, hey, Angie, you've looked at 1,000 of these. You see invoices all the time for this. Do you have anybody who can help me with a buried oil tank? And she'll be like, oh, actually, yeah. Angie's been in the business forever, so she can just say, like, yeah, that's InServ. Duh, Megan, like, why didn't you know this? Like, your processors are so helpful, and take advantage of it in St. Joe County because we are about the only county where our title companies work so hard for us. If you go into LaPorte and you ask at a LaPorte, processor in the title company to help you order inspections, they're going to laugh at you. Like, that's your job. But here, locally, we are so blessed that our title companies help us out tremendously.
I remember ordering those inspections when I was at the title company way back. That was one of my first jobs there.
Yeah, it's nice.
They have a wealth of knowledge in the database that they use. It's amazing.
Yeah,
So
it is. It's really
they
great.
always help answer questions.
Mhm.
Really can.
Yeah.
And they want your business, so they're going to help you.
Yeah, they are going to help you. Yeah. Okay. Any final questions? Yeah, thank you. Thanks for letting me sit in here.
You guys start writing the contracts too.
Yes. Yeah, I think you guys get so much information in these classes, and really what you have to do is go through it and use your field trainers to, check on this stuff, but you have to. There's new stuff now. I've been doing this for 13 years, and I still have things where I'm like, I have no idea. Yeah, yeah.
The dates too, that's what we talk about when we accept a contract, we're gonna have to need a few days on this. If we
Yes.
have something and then, do you fill out and do them after that and?
Yep.
Okay, I got you, because, yeah, I'm just laughing about that because I've had a lot of contracts with that lately.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, that's good, everybody just puts this in.
Yes, yeah.
You're saying, and then it's like,
And I write out everything. It could become such like second nature to like write through stuff, but like I have a house in River Park and they'll put like 3 days to send them association docs, and I'm like,
Yeah, who's going to pull an HO? Yeah, no.
there's no association docs here.
Not in River Park.
And not in River Park.
Even if there were,
Yes.
the company might have them stored in the background.
Yes. And so that's something, yeah. So that's something I would counter as a listing agent. I would tell my, sellers, again, I'm not doing any of this stuff. I always tell them, like, hey, just so you know, we're going to have to counter this offer for a few things. This is one of them, that this purchase agreement included HOA docs that we can't provide them. So, like, I'm not holding you to something that you can't provide. Like, this is River Park. Like, there technically is an association from
Sorry, but whoever the agent
100
was on
years.
that one,
Exactly.
questioning that agent.
Yeah. I clean up offers all the time. Bye, thank you.
guys